Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop my kid off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Good morning, listeners. It is Friday, September 21st, and I am getting ready to head to Protospiel, Chicago. For those of you unaware of it, Protospiel is a game development convention where everybody who comes is either a playtester or more often a designer who's also going to playtest. The idea is that you bring a prototype or prototypes, you sit down at tables with other people, and you play your prototype and or other people's prototypes. The goal of the event is to get solid feedback from people who are excited to try out prototypes and for you to find progress in doing that. There are a couple things about going to an event like this that are really fun. One, if you haven't ever been, you should think about going. Another series of events that are similar are called Unpub. They're similar to Protospiel, they're just run in a different place. Protospiel, there's one in Madison, one in Milwaukee, one in Chicago, one in Minneapolis. I know those are the four that I'm aware of. There might be more. But then they also have Unpub events at big conventions and throughout mostly the East Coast is where I think I've seen other Unpubs. So these are really productive and useful events for designers because one of the hardest things about getting a game designed is getting proper feedback and playtesting in. Of course, you can playtest the game yourself all you like, and you can have friends playtest it, but generally when friends playtest a game, they're not willing to tell you what they don't like about a game. Or sometimes they can't articulate it very well. The nice thing about going to a Protospiel is that everybody who comes is in the mindset of, I'm going to try out this game and tell you what I think of it or not. Now the downside to it is that designers often will tell you how to fix the game as well. And this is a line you have to walk because often when they say fix the game, they mean make the game more like I would like it to be, rather than trying to separate from themselves the part they didn't like and the way they thought the game should go. It's a fine distinction, and usually there's value in them articulating the ideas. In fact, I've gotten some really good ideas from other designers playing my games. But ultimately, you need to be the one who designs your game, and so it's useful to separate the feedback about the game from the advice about the game, if that makes sense. Nonetheless, it's usually a really exciting event. If you're going as a designer, you're expected to spend about half your time playing other people's games and half your time or so trying to get people to play yours. I generally find I'm spending, it's about half my time having people test my game, about half my time testing other people's games. It helps that my partner and we're bringing 5 prototypes to this one, so who knows how many tests we'll get in, but because there are 2 of us, we can kind of always be testing one of our games, and at the same time, one of us can go test someone else's game. It works really nicely as a way to amplify the experience of the event. I wanted to talk a little bit about the thing I'm wrestling with, which leads me to a larger conversation about games, because I know that you don't just tune in to hear my thoughts on my own games, particularly because you've never played one of my games, most likely. So, something I've been wrestling with my game is the win condition. Just as a back-of-the-envelope sketch, my game is about demons trying to enter the world by means of a bunch of people camping around a lake. Think about the movie The Evil Dead, for instance. You got these evil spirits that possess people and make them do stuff. So that's kind of, it's a Euro game or an area control and hand management game in which you're trying to build up power in order to enter the world. Now, originally the game had a win condition where once you got a certain amount of energy, you could use an action to do a thing and win. And it was sort of anticlimactic because often you could tell maybe 2 turns out who was going to win. I also had set it up so the area control part of the game was not very significant, and so it was really hard. One of the rules was that you had to, there's 6 areas on the board. You had to control the area where your marker is. You have this thing called a talisman that represents a sort of a thing that your followers have made for you. And if you don't control the area where your talisman is, you couldn't do a summoning. But generally, it was pretty counterproductive for the other players to fight you on control of your area. So that part didn't really work. At the same time, the game's mechanism by which you had to win was you had to have a certain amount of power saved up. The narrative premise was that once you have a certain amount of energy, you can open the gate. The problem is that in the process of saving up the power, some people would be better at making the engine run efficiently than others, and you could usually tell a couple turns away who was going to win. And I generally think if it's pretty clear who's going to win, and there's not much chance for a comeback, which this game did not include much of a catch-up mechanism, it's not fun to play out those last 2 turns. Which would then beg the question, but the game felt too fast if you could win just by getting a little bit ahead. So I've been experimenting with this alternate version where instead of building up your own energy, you now put energy into the gate track. It's like this track that's got these spaces, and once it's full, that's when the game ends. And you get double points for each. You get 1 point for each energy you have when the game ends, and you get 2 points for each energy you have in the gate when the game ends. So there's a benefit to putting energy in the gate. The downside is, to put energy in the gate, you have to sacrifice either one of your minions or one of the campers. And when you do that, you lose momentum. So, in thinking about how to make that work, but it actually works okay. I think that mechanism is the right one for the primary way the game will end, and I'm intrigued to see that continue as we go. But I don't like the idea of just having the one win condition, did you have enough energy at the end? I really like the clarity of I do a thing and I win, rather than I do a thing, then we add up points and see who wins. Adding up points is okay, but I'd prefer I do a thing and I win. Also, in our last playtest, the area control part, which I want to be a part of the game, just didn't work very well. There was not really much point to doing it. I hadn't really solidified the rules of why you would do it and so on. So for this next playtest, I've added a couple things that I think are really going to spice it up. One, we've now said that when you control an area, that also helps you control the camper, which means controlling the areas is much more valuable. Because when you control a camper and you take control of them, any tokens you have on the camper get dumped into the lake or burned. And so you lose that power. If you control an area, it's a sustained power a little bit. But at the same time, I want the fight for the area to be worthwhile. And so if it's easy to hold control of an area, I don't really want that to happen. So I've instituted a couple new rules, and I'm going to try to explain them here. It might sound, I apologize if this gets a little wonky, So the first one is, I've brought back the idea of opening the gate. So what we do is the place where the gate eventually would open is, I'm calling the fissure. And I'm making a thing that is the fissure. It's a card for now, or maybe it's a token. We'll see if I have a few minutes here before I leave for the Protospiel. And that fissure token represents the actual place where you could come through. Once the gate's open, then the strongest demon is going to be the one that comes through. But before the gate is open, the followers could pull a demon through, and that's a different set of criteria. So the idea is that fissure floats around the board. It goes in a counterclockwise motion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an alternate win condition. When the gate is full, it opens, and then we do the normal win condition of adding up the points. However, someone could go for the alternate win condition, which is to perform a rite of summoning. The rite of summoning is not going to be easy to do. It's going to require 4 things go together. 5. Well, 4. I'll say 4. Part 1, you have to have sway over the area where the fissure is. Number 2, you have to have your talisman in the area where the fissure is. Number 3, you have to have enough energy, as if you spent that energy, you could close the gate. So however many spaces are left on the gate, when you perform the action, you have to have that much energy. Number 4, you have to have one minion matching each of your sins. So you play all those things at once, and then you just win. But the idea of that is it's supposed to be pretty hard to do. That you could try to coordinate it, but I wouldn't want more than, say, 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 games to win that way. If it turned out that people were winning more often than, say, 1 in 4 games, I need to make that harder somehow. Because I really want it to be something that happens occasionally, but is not easy to do. I also want it to be something where if you go for that, you're kind of giving up your chance at the other thing. If you've ever played Hearts, there's a thing in Hearts where if you get all of the hearts plus the Queen of Spades, then instead of taking 26 points, everyone else takes 26 points. But if you get all but one of the hearts, then you get 25 points, and the person who took the other heart gets 1, and everyone else gets 0. So it's a real gamble to go for all the hearts, because if you miss it even a little, then you get hit hard. And I sort of like the idea of making it so in the last couple rounds, if there's somebody who feels like they're behind, they could focus, instead of trying to focus on winning, they could focus on getting that other win condition into play. But it's complicated enough that they really have to watch for it, and other players could try to foil them by, say, taking control of the area where the fissure is. If they did that, then you'd have to wait till the next round and have the fight again. The whole time you're burning up your energy. But if other players are fighting you to do that, they're reducing their own viability in the final scoring because they're spending their energy to do that. I'm interested in that because I like the idea of multiple paths to victory. I don't like the idea of many, many different ways you score points. I don't want the end of my game to feel like 7 Wonders. As much as I like that game, I like games where you add up 9 different categories and see who won. But that's not the game I'm designing. As it is, I would prefer to have a game where you just do something and win. But I don't know how to make it feel even that way. I would even say that's a problem with games that I've played that do work that way. Scythe, for instance. I can usually tell who's going to win by who's placing that 6th star. There's still points involved, but every time I've played, the person who played that 6th star wins. So, well, that's it for me today. My thoughts on the upcoming Protospiel. I hope that you found this sort of interesting, at least. If you're coming to Protospiel, I hope to see you there. It's going to be 3 great days of playtesting. You'll hear this after the show, though, because this will come out sometime next week or the week after even. But thanks for listening. Let me know what things you've tried in playtesting, or the next time that you're playtesting a game, what are you looking to understand or figure out? Drop me a line over at BoardGame Geek Guild 3269 to let me know your playtesting goals. And I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye. For those of you not aware, if you aren't aware of it, Protospiel is one of a couple different chains of... No.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.